he received the sentence that prosecutors were asking for. What was your reaction to the judge's decision?
My reaction was that this is a good sentence. It sends a message. We want to send a strong message that violations of civil rights by any public official, much less a law enforcement officer, need to be harshly addressed.
And they told us that some of the mitigating circumstances for the sentence are under seal, but can you say whether or not Vega has been cooperative during this case?
So I can't go into detail on that, but I will say we've had an extensive investigation. We gathered a lot of information through this investigation, and without going into particulars, the AUSAs in our office have been very aggressive in getting to the bottom of this misconduct and all misconduct associated with these two defendants.
What about with the Compton Sheriff's Station in general? There's been a lot of allegations with misconduct, with deputy gangs, tattoos. Is that part of this investigation?
We've dug deep with these two defendants to get as much information as possible, so I'll leave it at that. What I will say, what I think is really important about this particular sentence and this particular investigation is that we had two officers who violated their duty of trust, the duty of trust to the community to keep our community safe. And when law enforcement officers do that, they tear at our social fabric because we need public trust in our law enforcement officers. They betrayed not only the community, not only themselves, but other police officers who each and every day, the vast majority of whom act honorably, act with service, act with conviction and integrity. So this kind of sentence is really important to send a message that this type of conduct won't be tolerated.
The allegations surrounding this particular deputy's conduct, not just in this incident, but in the following incident where he shot and killed a 17-year-old, caused members of Congress to demand the Department of Justice investigate the LA County Sheriffs. It's been 3 years. Why has it taken so long to get any kind of outcome or answers to what the community is asking for?
I believe that this case shows the responsiveness of our office. We had two officers who engaged in pretty egregious conduct. They illegally arrested a young person. They then held him against his will. They then threatened, bullied him, and then they get in an accident which causes him harm. And then to top it all off, they try to cover it up with false reports. That was the conduct that was the focus of this investigation, and that's the conduct for which this defendant was sentenced appropriately.
Do you know if this defendant has a tattoo associated with the Compton station?
I do not know.
Is your office investigating deputy gangs?
Our office is investigating any misconduct, any violations of civil rights by any law enforcement entities. We, as a rule, cannot get into confidential information, grand jury information, but rest assured, as you can see with this investigation, that where there's misconduct by police officers, we will act aggressively.
The state attorney general has announced that they've opened a pattern and practice investigation into the sheriffs. How does that parallel track with what the federal government is doing, or are those separate investigations?
We have already consent decrees with certain aspects of the sheriff's department, which we've had for quite some time. We are very aggressive in monitoring compliance with those consent decrees. We'll continue to do so. What I think this case shows is that where there are specific instances of violations of civil rights, our office will act decisively.
The judge commented about the fact that the deputy knew what he was doing was illegal while he was doing it at the time. How do you explain the fact that a sworn officer thought he could get away with it?
I'll put it quite simple. He lied. It's not just that he knew what he's doing, he lied about it. He committed grave civil rights violations, and then these two officers tried to cover it up. That's not something we as a society can tolerate. It's not something our community can accept, and that's why it's important that my office address these things very aggressively.
The civil attorney for the victim said that he didn't come to court today because he was afraid of retaliation from other members of law enforcement. Is that something that your office was also concerned about with this case?
Our office was concerned about this case because it showed a violation of civil rights, which could happen in other instances. If these officers do it in this case, who's to say they wouldn't do it in another case? That's why when you see these types of things, you have to act aggressively, decisively to nip it in the bud.
But you're not worried about retaliation for the victim here?
I personally am not worried about retaliation for myself, if that's what your question is. In terms of the victim, we support our victims in the federal system. We have victim witness specialists that work with the victims. What I'm more concerned about is making sure that when law enforcement officers violate civil rights, that our office acts on those things. Here we have an appropriate sentence, a sentence that will send a message throughout the community that any public official, whether you're a police officer, politician, or otherwise, if you violate the law, if you violate civil rights, there will be consequences.
How do we prevent this misconduct from happening again?
I believe that it's very important that we have prosecutions to send messages. I think it's important that you all, as the media, publicize the consequences that occur when public officials act in this way. When public officials, including police officers, see these types of consequences, that deters violations of civil rights.
Just the last question. The local district attorney declined to file charges in the Vega subsequent, the later shooting of the teenager. Did your office also look at that case as well?
Our office has looked very comprehensively at all misconduct by these two deputies. We believe we've uncovered what is provable in terms of a violation of civil rights, and we've prosecuted what is provable in the most appropriate way possible.
Would you rule out going after either one of them for Cordado? Is that off the table now?
I won't rule out anything because we have long statute of limitations and we have strong investigative power, but at this point, this is what we've charged and this is what we're pursuing.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.